Hello, I know it's been a while. It's been another crazy year for me. This year I actually read a lot of good books. I wanted to share that with you. This year has been one of the best reading years for me, not just in terms of quantity, but also quality. Something I grew up doing is reading a lot. I definitely read, I'd say, more than the average child. And it's something that I've lost over the years, especially in high school. The only reading I would do were comics or the books that we had to study for school. Something that I miss a lot, definitely in the age of smartphones and having so many more ways to entertain yourself and get that instant gratification. Reading has been really tough for me as well. But this year I set myself a goal of 13 books, not that many. Last year I read 12, so this year I wanted to up it by one to set myself a realistic goal. I think I'm on 15 now. I'd like to share some of the books that I read this year. I keep restarting this video. I feel like every single book that I've put on this list, I can't justify why I like them so much and articulate the different themes and emotions that went through me as I read them. And I keep trying to articulate them intellectually, I guess. I think a big part of artistic literacy is not even about analysis, which school really hones in on, and by no means is that useless. It's very, very important. It's just all I've known. I have to analyze and spit out an essay on each book when all I'm really doing is just talking about why I like them and why they've affected me so much. Anyway, going back to my Goodreads, the first book that I read this year was Tales from the Inner City. Tales from the Inner City by Sean Tan. Sean is an Australian author. He wrote and illustrated this book. The cover itself is what really captivated me. It made me feel just a ton of weird emotions, and this cover really sold it for me. So I bought it off Amazon. It did not disappoint. Honestly, it might be one of my favorite books of all time. So this book, it's a collection of short stories, and each one is grouped by a certain animal. It's exploring the nature of humans, animals, and cities, the relationships between the three and how they coexist, but told in a very almost unsettling way and a very surreal yet very tender way. Some of these stories in there really moved me, and I was in tears by the end of a few of them. The book has really just stuck with me. The illustrations are absolutely gorgeous. I don't think the author was trying to say anything. At least for me, it was just feeling each story. It's really impacted me a lot. I definitely see myself revisiting this book many more times. The second book I read this year, it is called The Baron in the Trees. This is written by an Italian author called Italo Calvino in 1957. He is quite a famous author in Italy. I believe he is in the curriculum for many of the high schools there. Specifically this book, but I've also heard some of his other books are studied across Italy too. This book is basically about a young Italian boy who's born in a noble family, and he rebels against his family by saying that he will live the rest of his life in the trees. And that is exactly what he does. From his birth to his death in the trees, it's about the adventures that he goes through during his lifetime. And it's told through a very unique perspective because the narrator is actually the brother of Cosimo, the young boy, the Baron living in the trees. What I took out of this book the most is that switch in perspective, how we can live life completely on our own terms, not caring about what society, others tell you how to live. Again, a very moving story. In particular, one of the romances in the story really touched me. It is probably the most well-written sex scene I've ever read. It's not explicit at all. How Calvino describes that love was just absolutely amazing and incredible. I read this in English. If I were to have read it in Italian, I feel like a lot of the meaning would have been lost on me, I would have definitely struggled anyway. Maybe when my Italian gets better in the future, I will revisit this book in Italian. The third book I read was actually given to me by work. It is called A Whole New Mind: Why Right-Brainers Will Rule the Future by Daniel H. Pink. Out of all the books I read this year, this is probably my least favorite book. Definitely a businessy book for businessy people. But there's a lot of interesting concepts and examples in this book, and why quote-unquote left brain dominance will slowly fade, and how creative and emphatic right brain thinkers will start to run the world. So the designers, inventors, teachers, the storytellers, those are the people that will determine how the future of our society works. It kind of just briefly touched on all of these ideas, and although I'm sure he did extensive research, a lot of it was first-hand evidence, things that he experienced himself. Overall, a very interesting book. I definitely don't think I would revisit it. If anything, I would go back and do some more research on the specific examples that were brought forth in this book. The fourth book I read this year, again, one of my absolute all-time favorites, I read for the first time, called A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L. Peck. This is a very short book, so less than 200 pages. I would definitely highly recommend it to anyone. The premise is that a man is dead and now he's stuck in this sorting room like purgatory where there's a demon in front of him. The demon determines what hell he's going to be sent to. He ends up being sent to a hell that is an infinite bookshelf, up, down, left and right. No matter how far you go, there will always be bookshelves. In those bookshelves are just stacks and stacks of books, and in order to escape this hell, he has to find the story of his own life. How it's executed is just perfection. By the end of the story, I was, again, very, very moved. It doesn't lose sight of how absurd it is, so it definitely plays into that. But also, as absurd as it is, and as short as it is, the author doesn't rush. He takes time to explain the logistics of the hell itself, how things work. He really fleshes that out before diving into the journey of trying to find this book of his life. There's many subplots in that story, another relationship story that is very touching, with the added context of you're gonna be with that person for infinity. So some people have described this as an existential cosmic horror book, which I don't disagree with. It's absolutely terrifying. By the end of it, you're just sitting there, and you definitely need some time to process this book. This book for sure I will be revisiting again when I need to feel a bit more existential. I would 100% recommend this book. Number 5 was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, a now infamous self-help book, which was never meant to be a self-help or philosophical book. Meditations is Marcus Aurelius's personal journal, which someone somehow found and put into a book. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man on the planet, the emperor of the Roman Empire. He pretty much had everything and anything he ever wanted. Through these journal entries, you can see his very unique and powerful worldview that kept him grounded even after he achieved the level of power he did. I love the book in the sense of just being grateful for what you have now. I do distinctly remember at least 1 or 2 chapters where he's just thanking the gods and thanking the people around him and thanking nature. This book is not meant to be some profound book. I can see why it's turned into this self-help book. It really just focuses on the basics of being human, living a good life and living a meaningful life. I would definitely highly recommend Meditations. I will definitely be revisiting Meditations, even if it's not in its entirety. It is so simple, yet sometimes we all need a reminder that it's the simple things in life that is what it's all about. The 5th book that I read this year was The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, another very, very famous book, probably Kafka's most famous one. Metamorphosis is about a guy, he lives with his family and he wakes up the next day and he is a horrendous cockroach type creature. This book is also very absurd, as with all of Kafka's writing, very self-depreciating, judgmental, I would say horrifying. Although it's not a horror book, it's definitely got elements that, let's say, David Lynch, who was heavily inspired by Kafka, uses in his work. And of course, we all know David Lynch is one of the best. I definitely had to check out his inspirations. For me, this book is about isolation, family, the family dynamics, definitely about masculinity, what it means to be a man, what it means to be human. I understand why it's held in such high regard and why Kafka is also known as one of the most influential authors of all time. I then checked out his other works, more of his short stories, The Stoker and The Judgement, which are also both incredible books that I really enjoyed. I didn't think I would enjoy Kafka's writing as much as I did. The Metamorphosis isn't my first Kafka. My first Kafka, which I actually haven't completed yet, is Letters to Felice, just the compilation of his quote-unquote love letters to his two-time fiancée, Felice. You can see by how massive this book is, how much he actually wrote. I can't even imagine how high that pile of letters would be in Felice's room. He never kept the letters from Felice. Those are now lost. The ones to Felice she kept. I think his friend Max published them all after his death, against his own will, but the world now thanks Max. I don't even know where to start with it, because each letter is so raw and unfiltered. I mean, obviously these were meant to be private letters to a woman that he loved. It is over 4 years worth of letters. His life and her life, it's all on the pages. It's almost like you're a fly on the wall. I always equate it to, let's say, seeing the text messages of a couple in this day and age for the last 4 years, but just much more sophisticated, wordy, descriptive, and self-depreciating as always. Kafka has a way with words which I haven't seen in any other author, maybe Charles Dickens, which I'm reading for the first time this year. I cannot recommend Letters to Felice, not just because it is a gargantuan book. If you're just wanting to read an actual book, then reading it front to back is definitely not the way to go, hence why I've taken so long to read it. I think it's definitely a thing where the more time that passes, the more you can appreciate the world that Kafka was living in. You can pull elements of your real life into his life 100 years ago. It's such a fascinating book though, so for that reason I would highly recommend it. I believe it's not as read as Kafka's actual fictional work, which is a shame because this reveals so much about the world behind his works, who was the woman behind a lot of his most famous stories. I think this book is just a great companion piece to his other novels and works. After Kafka, I listened to the audiobook of Become What You Are by Alan Watts. Alan Watts is another pseudo-philosopher, and I say that not because he claimed to be a philosopher and wasn't, but because people like to put that label onto him when all he was doing was just translating what he learned in his life into his lectures, into his books. For me, Alan Watts is such a great communicator of these simple ideas, very much like Marcus Aurelius. While this book was written for an audience, I believe it's also a compilation of some of the essays he's written put together by his brother. Again, I think some, much like with Meditations, just take it on the surface level, reading it from front to back and then trying to conceive some sort of meaning from it. When I think the whole point of the book is that there is no external meaning beyond what you already are. I love the paradoxical title. If you are not familiar with Alan Watts and you don't want to commit your time reading an entire book, I definitely recommend listening to some of his lectures. He is hilarious. He is a great speaker, very clear with how he articulates these often spiritual ideas or religious ideas when none of these ideas were ever meant to be religious or spiritual. He's a very interesting person to listen to. Yes, you can find a lot of useful things to go through life through Alan Watts's works, but you don't need them. And he is a great advocate of that. As a result, he wasn't a wealthy man because of his works. The next book I read was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, and if that name sounds familiar, she is the writer of the Hunger Games series. This book is the prequel, which focuses on Haymitch, so the District 12 mentor for Katniss, if anyone remembers, played by Woody Harrelson, I believe. For me, this book was completely unnecessary. I was a fan of the original books as a teenager. I think my sister had this book on the bookshelves, and I decided I wanted something a bit lighter after listening to Alan Watts's book and reading a bunch of Kafka. This book was better than I thought. It reminded me why I liked The Hunger Games. Suzanne Collins writes young adult fiction well. I think the hate for her and Hunger Games in general is a bit far-reached because it's just become so popular, and that's natural. But I do think one of the big flaws, at least for myself, was the thinking that it was a lot deeper than it was, and that it had so much to say about fascism and dictatorships. It's more or less an extra title to earn some more extra cash. I think the trailer for the new movie already dropped, and as long as those keep making money, they'll keep churning out the books and the movies. But overall, the book itself was entertaining. If you were a fan like me of the original series, I would recommend it. It's quite a fun read. The next book I read was The Doors of Perception and Heaven and Hell by Aldous Huxley. Basically, this book was written by Huxley after he did some, I believe, peyote, which is the psychedelic found in a certain cactus in the American deserts. So I think it is used by the Native Americans. I might be wrong there. It might be the Mexicans who use this psychedelic. Pretty much a trip report by Huxley. But if you have read Brave New World or his other works, you know that Huxley is also an incredible writer. I don't know the exact word I'm looking for, but he pretty much writes in this long-winded way, I'd say. So if you can imagine a man who just went on a massive trip, tried to describe it with words when he's already known to use a lot of words, and that is The Doors of Perception. Sorry, it's raining so hard, I don't know if it's too loud. I think he was influenced by a book, or at least a quote from another writer much earlier than him. Yes, William Blake. So the quote, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern." I found this book fascinating. I don't think many people in the world will have experienced peyote. Reading about someone who has experienced this and how the view of their world changed afterwards was really fascinating, and it also gave me some new perspectives, which I appreciated. Definitely would like to check out more of Huxley as well. The next book I read is a very short book, and I think I listened to this on Spotify. It just randomly got recommended to me. It is called How to Hold a Cockroach, a book for those who are free and don't know it, by Matthew Maxwell. It's not a self-help book, but it's a book about challenging the beliefs that you grew up with and learning to be curious and self-compassionate instead of judgmental, unkind to yourself, especially in situations where it's tempting and easy to. I think I really needed to hear it from another perspective, and it came in the form of this book. It really affected me, and it helped me look at my own past and my own judgments of myself with more empathy and more compassion. It's a very easy book to read. It's quite repetitive in its structure, deliberately so. I'd say it's not for everyone, because if you're not in the right mindset, you can definitely see it as a very corny and unhelpful book. but when you're challenging some of the beliefs that you've held against yourself for your whole life, I think just seeing it in laid out very simply like this is very helpful. I really enjoyed this book as well. The next two books I read aren't really proper books. They're just like coffee table books that I found in a co-working place. They just decorate the bookshelves with these books, but I did enjoy them a lot. The first one was, and apologize for my French pronunciation, it's called C'est la vie, This is Life, A Journey Through France. And it's just some nice photographs of France with some cool quotes from famous French people pretty much. But some of the quotes were very profound and impactful, even though I was just reading them on the side. So let me try and pull some up from the book. There was one from Voltaire, who was a very pivotal figure in French history, who I'm very inspired by and fascinated about, who I got to see the grave of in the Pantheon in Paris. That was really, really cool. Although I haven't read any of his works, I definitely want to check him out further. His quote is, "Appreciation is a wonderful thing. It makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well." I really liked that quote. Another one, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." I think now more than ever, we need to heed his words. And another companion quote to that was, "Think for yourself and let others enjoy the privilege to do so too." The other coffee table book I read, which I actually loved, was called A Day in the Life of Italy. For obvious reasons, I enjoyed it, but also because of the premise. So this book is part of a photography series, April 27th, 1990. 100 of the world's leading photojournalists were tasked with capturing the change occurring in the country, capturing the daily lives of the people who kept the country running. As someone who's trying to get into photography, it's a really inspiring book to see how different photographers would take a prompt and then go and capture their own story and their own interpretation of that prompt. The photos in the book were firstly incredibly beautiful, but secondly, they told so many unique stories and perspectives. It's my favorite place on earth, so 10 out of 10. The latest book that I've completed this year is called My Mother Laughs by Chantal Akerman. She is a Belgian filmmaker who made movies from the 60s all the way up to the 2010s. When she committed suicide. So My Mother Laughs is about her complicated relationship with her Jewish mother who survived the Holocaust. It details mainly the final years of her mother's life, and this book is a companion piece to the film No Home Movie, which was Ackerman's last movie. So this is a very heartbreaking book, not just because of the loss of her mother, but it also details a lot about Ackerman's personal life and her relationships with her sister and her various partners in her past, people who she worked on films with. Although we don't get intrusive levels of detail like we do with Letters to Felice, we still get a glimpse into her headspace and why she feels certain things or thinks certain ways. You definitely see how her filmmaking was influenced by the things she was going through in her own life and her relationship with her mother. I think this book is hard to recommend for anyone who's never seen an Ackerman film and especially know her movie. I watched it this year at the Melbourne International Film Festival. I checked out, I think, 8 of her films, and she's quickly become one of my favorite filmmakers. Her lifelong struggle with depression also influenced so much of her work, but in a way that is so unfiltered, just her showing herself on the film, which funnily enough in the book she rejects that when someone says that to her, that she shows herself in the movies, which gives this sort of mystery around her. Even though it's such a raw book, it's still written by her, and so she's still filtering her innermost thoughts. It's a very interesting dynamic. I still thoroughly enjoyed the book. She has a very, very unique style of writing. Her powers behind the camera sometimes don't directly translate to the woman behind the pen. Her writing is sometimes very hard to understand, because she also, like me, struggles to articulate her own feelings through words. And so I think that's what I enjoyed about the book the most, which was being able to relate to her inability to express herself through the words. Seeing that in play as you read each page is very interesting. So right now I'm still on my last book of the year, and I hope to complete it by the end of the year, so I have just over a week. And I picked this up for $5. This is a absolute classic, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. This is my first Charles Dickens. I actually tried to read The Tale of Two Cities, and I gave up after the first line, the infamous first line. I realized that I just did not have the patience to go through it at that time in my life. But after reading Great Expectations, I very much want to give that another go. As I said before, Dickens has this incredible way with his words. They're so descriptive and vivid, and you really feel like you're in Pip's shoes. Every emotion he's feeling, you're feeling as well. I completely understand why he was considered one of the greatest authors of all time. I think it's a very appropriate book to end the year on, a new year with so many unknowns and great expectations. I am thoroughly enjoying it right now. I'm just about to finish volume 1, and I believe there's 3 volumes in there, so looking forward to talking about it perhaps in my video next year about the books I read. So that concludes what I read in 2025 list. Thank you so much for watching. If 1 or 2 people who clicked on this video and watched it read 1 or 2 of the books in this video and then let me know in the comments, that would be a huge win for me, because at the end of the day, this is what my channel is meant to be about: sparking curiosity, connection between myself and strangers across the world who might find the same beauty in the things I like. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I wish you all a happy Christmas and happy New Year's. Ciao.